The morning sun rose over New Sarajevo like it had for the past 15 years. The wheat fields stretched toward the horizon in golden waves. Automated harvesters moved through the crops with quiet efficiency. It looked like peace. It looked like safety. It looked like an easy target. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the colony's central hub. She held a cup of coffee and watched the farmers begin their day. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were civilian, just a work jacket and warm boots. Nothing about her suggested she had once commanded a destroyer squadron during the Titan Wars. Nothing about her suggested she had burned 3 enemy fleets to ash above Saturn's rings. That was the point. "Morning, Commander," a voice said behind her. Marcus Chen walked up carrying his own coffee. He was 70 years old with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He ran the Agricultural Supervisory Board. Most people knew him as a patient teacher who could fix any farming equipment. Few remembered that he had once calculated orbital bombardment trajectories for Earth Defense Force. Fewer still knew he could still do it in his head. "Morning, old man," Elena said. It was his nickname. He wore it with pride. "Sensors picked up something at the edge of the system last night," Marcus said quietly. "Sarah's running analysis now." Elena's expression didn't change, but her grip on the coffee cup tightened slightly. "How many?" 12 signatures. Military grade. They're not trying to hide. Crash? That would be my guess. They've been moving through this sector for 6 months. We knew they'd come eventually. Elena nodded slowly. They had all known. That was why they had spent 15 years preparing. That was why every farmer on this colony knew how to strip and reassemble a pulse rifle in 30 seconds. That was why the irrigation tunnels had reinforced walls and ventilation systems. That was why the machine shops had detailed plans for converting tractors into armored fighting vehicles. New Sarajevo wasn't a farming colony that happened to have veterans. It was a military fortress that happened to grow wheat. "Call the council meeting," Elena said, quietly. "Normal schedules for everyone else. We don't want panic." Marcus nodded and left. Elena stayed at the window, watching the peaceful morning. She had come here to escape war. They all had. 2,300 colonists, and nearly 800 of them had military backgrounds. Former soldiers, ship crews, marines, intelligence officers. They had seen enough blood. They had fought enough battles. They wanted to grow food and raise children and watch sunsets without checking radar for incoming missiles. The galaxy, it seemed, had other plans. The council met in the underground command center. It was disguised as a water treatment facility on the official colony maps. In reality, it was a military operations center that would have impressed most planetary defense forces. Holographic displays showed the colony's layout, defensive positions, and the incoming fleet's trajectory. Sarah Kim stood at the main console. She was 35, calm, and precise. She had been a signals intelligence officer in the Navy. Now she ran the colony's communication network. Her fingers moved across the controls, bringing up data. 12 ships, she said. Kresh Dominion military configuration. 3 cruisers, 8 destroyers, 1 command carrier. Standard harvesting fleet formation. They're decelerating toward our orbit. They'll arrive in 18 hours. "A harvesting fleet," James Dever muttered. He was a stocky man with scarred hands and a talent for explosives. He had been a combat engineer. Now he built irrigation systems and, in his spare time, designed elaborate defensive traps. "They think we're cattle. They think we're easy," Elena corrected. "That's different." A hologram of a Kresh warrior appeared above the table. It stood 8 feet tall, with scaled green skin, powerful limbs, and a jaw full of sharp teeth. The Kresh Dominion had conquered 14 systems in the past decade. They were strong, brutal, and confident. They took worlds through overwhelming force and intimidation. They've been hitting agricultural colonies, Sarah continued. Light defenses, small populations. They land troops, seize resources, enslave anyone useful, and move on. Average operation time is 48 hours. What do they know about us? Elena asked. Publicly available data only. Population of 2,300. Primary industry is agriculture and light manufacturing. Minimal orbital defenses listed in the registry. No military presence on record. Sarah smiled slightly. They see an easy payday. Good, Elena said. She looked around the table at her council. Marcus, Sarah, James, and 6 others. All veterans. All tired of war. All completely capable of waging it. Recommendations? Marcus spoke first. Let them come. We've prepared for this. Our defensive positions are solid. We know this terrain. They don't. We should evacuate the children and non-combatants through the Southern Tunnel Network, said Dr. Amelia Okonkwo. She ran the colony's medical facilities and had been a trauma surgeon in 3 different wars. Get them to the mountain shelters. Agreed, Elena said. Start that immediately but quietly. Make it look like normal school field trips and community activities. I don't want panic. What about the response? James asked. When they make contact, what do we tell them? Elena thought for a moment. We play scared. We beg for mercy. We ask for time to evacuate. We make them confident and careless. And then? Sarah asked. And then we show them what happens when you mistake farmers for prey. The Kresh fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 12 warships slid into orbit above New Sarajevo like predators surrounding wounded prey. They were massive, bristling with weapons and utterly confident. The command carrier broadcast on all frequencies. The voice was rough, translated by automated systems into broken standard English. Human colony. This world is now property of Kresh Dominion. You will surrender all resources. You will prepare population for processing. You have 6 hours to comply. Resistance means death. Compliance means survival. Choose wisely. In the command center, Elena listened to the message. Around her, the council watched in silence. Finally, she nodded to Sarah. Put me through. Audio only. Route it through the administrative office. Sarah worked the controls. You're live. Elena took a breath and let her voice shake. She made herself sound terrified, desperate, helpless. It was an act she had practiced but never thought she would use. Please, she said. Please, we're just farmers. We have children here. We need time to evacuate them. Just give us time. We won't fight. We can't fight, please. There was a long silence from the Kresh fleet. Then harsh laughter echoed through the speakers. 2 hours, the Kresh commander said. Evacuate your young. Then we land. Resistance will be punished. All will be harvested. The transmission ended. Elena straightened. The fear vanished from her face, replaced by cold calculation. Around the table, her council waited. All personnel to positions, she said quietly. Open the weapons caches. Activate the defensive network. Convert the equipment as planned. Sarah, I want eyes on every landing zone. Marcus, prep the mass drivers, but keep them cold until I give the word. James, are the traps ready? Ready and waiting, Commander. Good. Elena looked at the holographic display showing their colony. Their home. The place they have built with their own hands. They think they're coming to harvest crops. They're wrong. She touched a control and red markers appeared across the map. Defensive positions. Killing zones. Ambush points. 15 years of careful planning. They're coming to reap what they sowed, Elena said. and we're going to bury them in it. Outside, the wheat field swayed in the morning breeze. The harvesters continued their work. Everything looked peaceful. Everything looked normal. Beneath the surface, an army prepared for war. War Brood Master Shurketh stood on the bridge of his command carrier and looked down at the green and blue world below. It was pretty in the way that prey animals were pretty. Soft, vulnerable, easy to break. Sensors confirm minimal defenses, his tactical officer reported. The young warrior's scales were bright with excitement. This was his first harvesting operation. A few ground-based weapons. No orbital platforms. No military vessels in system. Population? Shurketh asked. 2,300. Concentrated in one primary settlement. Several small farming outposts. They are preparing to evacuate their young. Shurketh's jaw opened in what passed for a Kresh smile. Of course they are. Humans love their offspring. It makes them weak. He looked at the tactical display. We will land at 3 points. Northern settlement, eastern processing facility, southern landing field. Overwhelming force. They will see our strength and collapse immediately. The human administrator begged for mercy. Another officer said with contempt. Her voice shook with fear. As it should, Shurketh said. Begin landing operations. I want this finished by nightfall. The Dominion expects efficiency. The fleet moved into position. 12 warships in perfect formation. 3,000 Kresh warriors ready to deploy. It should have been glorious. It should have been easy. It was neither. The first landing pod screamed through the atmosphere toward the northern settlement. 200 Kresh warriors in full combat armor, weapons ready, chanting war songs. They expected terrified civilians running in panic. They expected easy victory. The landing pods hit the ground in a wide clearing that seemed perfect for deployment. The doors opened with hydraulic hisses. Warriors poured out, forming up in standard assault formation. For exactly 7 seconds. Nothing happened. Then the ground exploded. James Dever had spent 2 years preparing that clearing. He had placed shape charges under every meter of soil. He had calculated angles and blast patterns. He had tested the system 12 times with progressively larger explosions to make sure it worked perfectly. It worked perfectly. The first wave of charges threw warriors into the air. The second wave caught them as they fell. The third wave collapsed the edges of the clearing inward, creating a crater. In 20 seconds, 140 Kresh warriors died without firing a single shot. The survivors stumbled out of the smoke, disoriented and injured. They found themselves surrounded by trees and rocks. Good cover, they thought. They were wrong. The trees and rocks were positions. Behind them, colonists opened fire. Former Marines used hunting rifles with armor-piercing rounds. Former ship gunners operated crew-served weapons mounted on converted tractors. Former snipers fired from positions a kilometer away, picking off officers and communication specialists. The Kresh were stronger than humans. In close combat, they were nearly unstoppable. But the colonists didn't let them get close. They fired from cover, relocated, fired again. They used the terrain they knew by heart. They coordinated with hand signals and encrypted communications. In 40 minutes, the entire northern landing force was destroyed. 200 Kresh warriors reduced to scattered bodies and burning equipment. One warrior survived long enough to transmit a message back to the fleet. Trap, not civilians, military. Request. Then his transmission ended on the command carrier. Shurketh stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The Northern Landing Force icon had gone dark. Completely dark. What happened? He demanded. Unknown Warbrood Master. Transmissions ended abruptly. No distress calls. No withdrawal orders. Just ended. The Eastern and Southern forces? Still deploying. No contact with enemy yet. Open communication with all ground forces. Maximum alert. This is not a normal harvesting. But the warning came too late. At the Eastern Processing Facility, the crash found what looked like large metal buildings full of agricultural equipment. They moved in to secure it. What they didn't know was that every building was rigged. Marcus Chen watched from 3 kilometers away, his finger on the detonator. He had once destroyed an enemy space station by overloading its reactor. A few agricultural buildings were simple by comparison. He pressed the button. The explosions weren't as large as the northern clearing. They didn't need to be. The buildings collapsed inward, crushing warriors beneath tons of metal and concrete. Fuel tanks ignited, turning the facility into an inferno. Chemical storage containers ruptured, releasing toxic smoke. The Eastern Force lost 90 warriors in the first 2 minutes. At the southern landing field, the crash encountered something different. They landed successfully and formed up without incident. They began their advance toward the colony proper. Everything seemed normal. Then the irrigation tunnels opened. Elena had always known the tunnels would be their greatest advantage. The crash expected surface combat. They didn't expect enemies appearing from below. Squads of colonists emerged behind the crash lines, attacked with grenades and automatic weapons, and vanished back underground before the enemy could respond. It was guerrilla warfare perfected over centuries of human conflict. Hit and run, ambush and fade, death from unexpected directions. The Kresh were brave and strong, but they were trained for conventional battles. They didn't know how to fight an enemy that refused to stand and trade blows. The Southern Force called for extraction after losing 70 warriors. They retreated back to their landing pods and lifted off, carrying their wounded and leaving their dead behind. In the command center, Elena watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The first engagement was over. The crash had landed 3 forces. One was destroyed, one was scattered and burning, and one had retreated in disarray. Casualties? She asked. 12 wounded, none critical, Amelia reported. No deaths. The defensive positions worked as planned. Ammunition expenditure? 8% of stockpiles. We can sustain this for weeks. Elena nodded. They had been conservative with ammunition, knowing they might need it later. The crash, on the other hand, had just lost nearly 300 warriors and achieved nothing. Sarah, what's the fleet doing? Repositioning. They're moving into high orbit. I'm picking up a lot of encrypted communications. They sound confused. They should be, Marcus said. He looked tired but satisfied. They came here expecting farmers. Instead, they found soldiers who happened to grow wheat. They'll come again, James said. But they won't underestimate us this time. Good, Elena said. I don't want them underestimating us. I want them scared. I want them making mistakes. I want them committing everything they have so we can destroy it all at once. She looked at the holographic planet spinning above the table. Somewhere up there, a Kresh commander was realizing he had made a terrible mistake. He was realizing that humans weren't prey animals. He was realizing that he had attacked the wrong colony. Send the message to the civilian shelters, Elena said. Tell them the first attack failed. Tell them we're winning. Tell them to stay strong. And what do we tell the Kresh? Sarah asked. Elena thought for a moment. Then she smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had just seen prey walk into a trap. Tell them nothing, she said. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them lose sleep trying to figure out what kind of colony they just attacked. And if they call again demanding surrender, then we explain to them very clearly that they made a mistake coming here. We explain that New Sarajevo is defended by people who have seen more war than their entire species. We explain that they have one chance to leave peacefully. And if they don't leave? Elena's smile faded. Her expression became cold and hard. It was the expression of someone who had burned fleets above Saturn. It was the expression of someone who would do it again if necessary. Then we show them exactly what humanity is capable of when you threaten our homes, she said quietly. We show them why you don't attack veterans who came here for peace. We show them the difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to. Outside, the sun was setting over New Sarajevo. The wheat fields glowed golden in the fading light. Smoke rose from the battle sites in dark columns. The colony looked peaceful from orbit. It looked vulnerable. It was neither. In the sky above, 12 Kresh warships circled like predators. But for the first time, they circled with caution. They circled with uncertainty. They circled wondering if perhaps they had bitten off more than they could chew. They had. They just didn't know it yet. Shirkuth stared at the casualty reports and felt something he had not felt in 20 years of military service. Fear. 300 warriors lost in the first engagement. Not wounded. Not captured. Dead. An entire battalion gone before achieving a single objective. The harvesting operation that should have taken 2 days was already a disaster, and they had barely started. Status of remaining ground forces? He asked. 2,700 warriors combat ready. They are requesting heavy weapons and air support for the next assault. Denied, Shirkuth said. His officers turned to stare at him in surprise. If we use orbital weapons, we damage the resources we came to harvest. We need this colony intact. The Dominion expects profit, not ashes. Then, what do? Warbrood Master. Shirkuth looked at the tactical display. The human colony was small. The humans were outnumbered 10-1. By all logic, they should lose. But logic was not working here. These humans fought like nothing in the intelligence reports. They used tactics that seemed cowardly, hiding, ambushing, refusing direct combat, but they were devastatingly effective. We commit everything, he said finally. 5,000 warriors in one concentrated assault. We overwhelm their defenses through sheer numbers. Even clever prey dies when the pack is large enough. And if they have more surprises, then we adapt. But we do not retreat. Retreat means disgrace. Better to die here than return to the Dominion in failure. The orders went out. Every warrior on every ship prepared for deployment. This time, there would be no small probing attacks. This time, they would hit the colony with everything they had. This time, Shirkuth thought, we will crush them. He was wrong. Elena stood in the command center and watched 5,000 red icons descend from orbit. The Kresh were committing everything. It was what she had hoped for. All forces to position, she said calmly. Execute, Plan Grinder. Plan Grinder was brutal. It was simple. It was effective. The colonists would trade space for time, falling back through prepared defensive positions. Each position would bleed the enemy. Each retreat would draw them deeper into the kill zone. Like meat in a grinder, the Kresh would be chewed up piece by piece. Mass drivers? Marcus asked. Not yet. Let them commit fully first. I want their entire ground force on the surface before we touch the fleet. The Kresh landed in 3 massive waves. This time, they checked for traps. They advanced cautiously. They used drones and scanners. They were learning, but they were learning too late. The colonists opened fire from concealed positions 2 kilometers out. Long-range sniper fire took down officers and specialists. Mortar dropped explosives into the landing zones. Automated turrets activated, firing from positions the Kresh couldn't see. The Kresh adapted. They used their numbers to overwhelm individual positions. They accepted casualties and pushed forward. 3 warriors would die taking 1 defensive point, but they took it. They were learning that humans couldn't be everywhere at once. Elena watched them advance and smiled. They thought they were winning. They were wrong. Every position they took was one the colonists had already planned to abandon. Every advance put them deeper into the trap. "Eastern defensive line, fall back to secondary positions," she ordered. "Northern line, same. Let them think they're pushing us back." The colonists retreated through the tunnel systems. They moved equipment, relocated, and set up at new positions. To the creche, it looked like a panicked withdrawal. In reality, it was a choreographed dance they had practiced for years. At the colony's eastern edge, James Dever worked with a team of engineers. They had prepared something special. A grain silo stood tall and seemingly innocent. Inside, it was filled with fuel-air explosives and ball bearings. When the creche troops passed beneath it, James triggered the collapse. The silo fell sideways, rupturing on impact. The fuel-air mixture spread across 200 meters. Then James triggered the ignition. The explosion killed 68 creche warriors instantly and injured over 100 more. The ball bearings acted like shrapnel, shredding armor and flesh. "That's for thinking we're farmers," James muttered, already moving to his next position. In orbit, Sarah Kim sat at her console in a hidden facility 3 kilometers from the main colony. She was fighting a different kind of war. Her fingers danced across controls as she attacked the creche fleet's computer systems. She had been a signals intelligence officer. She knew systems. She knew networks. She knew that any fleet operating this far from home base would have exploitable vulnerabilities. She had been probing their defenses since they arrived. Now, she attacked. She couldn't take control of their ships. Their security was too good for that. But she could do something almost as valuable. She could feed them false data. She could corrupt their sensor readings. She could make them see things that weren't there, feeding targeting errors to their orbital systems, she reported to Elena. "If they try bombardment, half their shots will miss by at least 1 kilometer. "Beautiful," Elena said. "Keep it up." The creche continued their advance. They were paying for every meter in blood, but they were advancing. They pushed through the outer defensive ring. They secured the eastern farms. They reached the edge of the colony proper. Then Marcus Chun revealed his surprise that the atmospheric processors scattered across the colony looked like environmental equipment. They had towers and power systems and sensor arrays. The creche intelligence had noted them and dismissed them as civilian infrastructure. They were wrong. They were mass drivers, electromagnetic launchers that could accelerate projectiles to hypersonic speeds. Marcus had designed them himself, using his decades of experience with orbital weapons. They were hidden in plain sight, disguised as something harmless. "Mass drivers online," Marcus reported. "Targeting solutions locked." "Pick your targets," Elena said. "Fire when ready." Marcus chose carefully. The command carrier was too important. It probably had the best defenses. But the destroyers flanking it were vulnerable. He selected 2 targets, calculated trajectories accounting for atmospheric density and planetary rotation, and fired. Tungsten rods 3 meters long and 20 centimeters wide launched from the surface. They accelerated through the lower atmosphere, building speed. By the time they reached orbit, they were traveling at Mach 25. At that speed, they didn't need explosives. Kinetic energy was enough. The first rod punched through a destroyer's hull like paper. It passed completely through the ship, leaving a meter-wide hole that vented atmosphere and debris. The second rod hit another destroyer's engine section. The ship's reactor containment failed. The resulting explosion was visible from the surface. In 5 seconds, 2 creche warships died. On the command carrier, alarms screamed. Shurkov stared in disbelief as two of his ships vanished from the tactical display. What happened? He roared, "Surface attack! They have orbital weapons! Multiple launch sites detected across the colony. Destroy them! All ships, target those installations!" The fleet opened fire. Plasma beams and kinetic weapons struck the colony from orbit. Buildings exploded. Fields burned. But Sarah's corrupted targeting data meant half the shots missed completely. And the mass drivers were hardened installations designed to withstand bombardment. Marcus launched again. Another tungsten rod screamed into orbit. Another destroyer died. "They're killing us from the surface," Shurkov's tactical officer shouted. "We need to pull back." "No." Shurkov slammed his fist on the console. "We commit everything. Ground forces, push harder. Fleet, maintain fire. We will not be defeated by primitive ground weapons." But they were being defeated. On the surface, the Kresh ground forces were bleeding out in the grinder. In orbit, the fleet was taking casualties from an enemy that shouldn't have been able to touch them. In the colony, Dr. Amelia Okonkwo worked in an underground medical facility. Wounded colonists came through on stretchers. She triaged, operated, saved lives. It was exhausting work, but she had done it before in 3 different wars. What surprised her was the Kresh prisoner they brought in. His name was Vesk. He was young, barely an adult by Kresh standards. He had been wounded when his squad was ambushed. His leg was mangled, and he was losing blood. His squad had left him behind in their retreat. Amelia looked at the alien warrior. He was the enemy. He had come to enslave or kill her people. She could leave him to die, and no one would question it. She didn't. "Get him on the table," she told her staff. "Same as any other patient." "He's Kresh," one of the nurses said. "He's injured," Amelia replied. "That's all that matters in my hospital." She operated on Vesk for 3 hours. She repaired the damaged leg, stopped the bleeding, and stabilized him. When he woke, he stared at her with confused eyes. "Why?" he asked in broken standard. "Why save enemy?" "Because I'm a doctor," Amelia said simply. "Because you're hurt." "Because that's what we do." Vesk didn't understand. In Kresh culture, weakness meant death. Enemies were destroyed, not healed. The idea of showing mercy to a defeated foe was alien to him. "Your commanders told you we were weak," Amelia said. "That we were prey. That we would be easy to conquer. Were they right?" Vesk thought about his squad being ambushed. About the explosions and the gunfire. About being abandoned by his own warriors. About this human doctor saving his life when she could have let him die. "No," he said quietly. "They were wrong. Remember that," Amelia said. "Remember that we could have killed you, and we chose not to. Remember that we're not what your Dominion told." The 3rd day of battle dawned over a transformed landscape. The wheat fields were trampled and burned. Buildings were rubble. Smoke hung in the air like fog. The pretty agricultural colony was gone, replaced by a war zone, but the colonists were winning. Elena studied the casualty reports in the command center. The Kresh had lost over 2,000 warriors in 3 days of fighting. The colonists had lost 43 dead and 116 wounded. The exchange rate was almost 50 to 1. "They're breaking," Marcus said. He pointed at the tactical display. "Look at their formation. It's scattered. They're not coordinating like they did on day 1. He was right. The Kresh advance had stalled. Their warriors were exhausted, demoralized, and running low on supplies. They had expected a quick victory. Instead, they were trapped in a grinding war of attrition against an enemy that knew every rock, every hill, every tunnel. "Status of the fleet?" Elena asked. 4 destroyers destroyed. 2 cruisers damaged and withdrawing to high orbit. The rest are maintaining position but not providing fire support. Sarah's cyber attacks have them scared to shoot. And Shurkith? Still on the command carrier. Still trying to salvage this disaster. Intercepted communications suggest he's under pressure from Dominion Command to either win quickly or withdraw. He won't withdraw, Elena said. That would mean admitting defeat. He'll keep pushing until he has nothing left to push with. Or until we break him, James added. He looked exhausted. They all did. 3 days of constant fighting took a toll even on experienced veterans. What's the plan? Elena looked at the map. The crash forces were concentrated around the colony's main administrative center. They had pushed deep into the settlement, taking buildings block by block. They thought they were winning. They thought one more push would break the human defense. They were wrong. We give them what they want, Elena said. We let them take the administrative center. We let them think they've won. That's our headquarters, Sarah said. That's our old headquarters, Elena corrected. Everything important was moved underground weeks ago. What's left above is empty buildings and a very large trap. Understanding dawned on her officers' faces. How large a trap? James asked. Large enough to end this war in one explosion. Shurkith watched the tactical display and felt something like hope. His forces had finally broken through the human defensive lines. They were moving into the colony's center. One more push, and they would secure the administrative buildings. Once they held the colony's heart, the humans would have to surrender. All units advance, he ordered. Concentrate on the central plaza. Take the administrative buildings. This ends today. His remaining warriors surged forward. They were tired and bloodied, but they could smell victory. The humans were retreating. The colony was falling. They just needed to push a little harder. They entered the central plaza in force. 1,700 Kresh warriors, more than half of what remained from the original invasion force. The administrative buildings loomed around them: offices, storage facilities, command centers. The heart of the colony dot, it was quiet. Too quiet. A young officer turned to his commander. Where are the humans? Why aren't they defending this area? The commander didn't have an answer. Something felt wrong. The buildings were empty. The streets were deserted. There were no defenses, no ambushes, no gunfire. 3 kilometers away, Elena watched through remote cameras. The Kresh had committed. Nearly their entire ground force was concentrated in the plaza and surrounding buildings. Exactly as planned. James, she said quietly. Execute. James Devers sat at a control panel with his finger over a single button. He had spent 3 months rigging the administrative center. Every building, every basement, every sewer line. Thousands of kilograms of explosives, carefully placed for maximum effect. He had done the calculations 100 times. He knew exactly what would happen when he pressed the button. He pressed it. The explosion could be seen from orbit. The Central Plaza erupted in a column of fire and debris that reached 300 meters into the sky. Every building in a 6-block radius came down simultaneously. Underground charges created a crater 20 meters deep. Fuel-air bombs mixed with the concrete dust, creating a secondary explosion that engulfed everything. 1,700 Kresh warriors died in less than 10 seconds. The shockwave shattered windows 5 kilometers away. The sound was like thunder that went on and on. When it finally stopped, there was only silence and smoke, and the crackling of fires in the command carrier. Every alarm went off at once. Shurkith stared at the sensor readings, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The entire center of the colony had just vanished, and with it, most of his ground forces. Ground forces respond. He roared. Survivors report. Silence. All units acknowledge. Silence. His tactical officer turned to him with wide, terrified eyes. War Broodmaster. They're gone. All of them. The entire Central Assault Force is gone. Shurkith felt something break inside him. Not his body. His mind. His certainty. His understanding of how war worked. He had committed everything to this attack. He had thrown his warriors at this colony with absolute confidence that numbers and strength would prevail. He had been wrong. How? He whispered. How did they do this? Nobody had an answer. On the surface, the remaining Kresh forces, scattered units on the outskirts of the colony, received the news of the disaster. Some tried to regroup. Some tried to advance. Most simply fled toward the landing zones. Desperate to escape, the colonists hunted them down. Former scout snipers picked off stragglers from a kilometer away. Automated turrets emerged from hidden positions, cutting down fleeing warriors. Squads of colonists emerged from the tunnels behind enemy positions, trapping them between gunfire and empty planes. It wasn't battle anymore. It was extermination. Vesk, the young Kresh prisoner, heard the news in the hospital. He heard that the War Broodmaster's great assault had been annihilated. He heard that thousands of warriors had walked into a trap and died. He heard that the humans had known, had planned, had waited for exactly that moment. They saw it coming, he said to Dr. Okonkwo. They knew what we would do before we did it. Experience, Amelia said. She was stitching up a wounded colonist, working with steady hands despite 3 days without proper sleep. Your commanders think in terms of strength and honor. Our commanders think in terms of survival and victory. They fought wars your people can't imagine. They've seen things that would give your War Broodmaster nightmares. We are stronger than humans, Vesk said. It was what he had been taught his entire life. In close combat, yes, Amelia agreed. One-on-one, you probably win. The war isn't one-on-one. War is tactics and strategy and deception. War is knowing your enemy better than they know themselves. War is being willing to do whatever it takes to protect your home. She finished the stitching and looked at Vesk directly. Your Dominion made a mistake coming here, she said. You attacked a colony of people who have spent their entire lives learning how to fight. We didn't want to fight anymore. We came here for peace. But you brought war to us, and now you're learning what happens when you force veterans back into battle. What happens? Vesk asked. We win, Amelia said simply. We always win. Because we fight smarter, we fight dirtier, and we fight harder than anyone expects. And we never, ever give up. In orbit, Marcus Chun prepared for the final strike. The Kresh fleet was in disarray. 4 destroyers destroyed, 2 cruisers damaged, and the command carrier isolated. They had pulled back to high orbit, trying to stay out of range of the mass drivers. They weren't out of range. Targeting solution locked on the command carrier, Marcus reported. One shot. We've been saving ammunition for this. Shurkath's ship? Elena asked. Their flagship. Take it down, and the rest will break. Elena thought about it. They could destroy the command carrier. They could kill Shurkath and his command staff. It would be the final blow that shattered the Kresh fleet completely. But she had a better idea. Send them a message instead, she said. Direct communication. I want to talk to Shurkath. Sarah looked surprised but opened the channel. You're connected. War Broodmaster Shurkath, Elena said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. My name is Commander Elena Vesquez. I'm what you would call the leader of this colony's defense forces. I'm calling to discuss terms. There was a long pause. Then Shurkath's voice came through, rough with rage and exhaustion. Terms? You wish to surrender? No, Elena said. I'm offering you the chance to surrender. Your ground forces are destroyed. Your fleet is damaged. You have lost over 3,000 warriors and achieved exactly nothing. You came here expecting an easy victory over farmers. Instead, you found veterans who know how to fight. We will never surrender to prey animals. Shirkuth roared. Then you'll die, Elena said simply. I have mass drivers locked on your command carrier. I can destroy it any time I want. Your remaining ships can't protect you. We've proven that. You have two choices. Surrender your remaining forces and leave this system, or die here with them. The Dominion will send more fleets. We will return in greater numbers. Maybe, Elena said. But you won't be there to see it. You'll be dead. Is that what you want? To die for nothing on some agricultural colony at the... The Kresh surrender was broadcast on every frequency. Shirkuth's voice, defeated and bitter, ordered all remaining ground forces to lay down weapons and assemble at designated collection points. The surviving ships were to withdraw to the edge of the system and wait for permission to leave. Elena watched it happen from the command center. She felt no joy, no triumph. Only exhaustion and a deep sadness for the waste of it all. How many? She asked Amelia. Final count, 127 colonists dead. 318 wounded. We'll recover, but it'll take time. 127 people who had come here for peace. 127 farmers, teachers, engineers, parents. Dead because someone thought they looked like easy prey. And the Kresh? Over 3,000 dead. 483 captured, mostly wounded. The rest fled into the hills. We're rounding them up now. Elena nodded. The numbers were devastating. The Kresh had come with overwhelming force and confidence. They were leaving broken, defeated, and fundamentally changed in their understanding of humanity. Prepare the prisoners for transport, Elena said. Medical treatment for all wounded, including theirs. We keep our word. Some of the colonists want revenge, Marcus said quietly. They want to execute the prisoners. They want blood for blood. I know, Elena said. And I understand. But we're not monsters. We fought to defend our homes, not to commit atrocities. The prisoners get medical care, food, and transport back to their fleet. That's final. Marcus nodded. He had expected nothing less. That was why Elena was the commander. She knew when to be ruthless and when to be merciful. In the makeshift prison camp, Vesk sat among other captured Kresh warriors. They were a sorry sight, wounded, exhausted, and defeated. Many still couldn't believe what had happened. They had come expecting an easy victory over weak prey animals. Instead, they had been crushed by an enemy that fought with cunning, preparation, and absolutely no mercy. Dr. Okonkwo moved through the camp, checking wounds and providing treatment. She worked alongside colonist medics, treating Kresh patients with the same care as human ones. Some warriors flinched when she approached, expecting torture or execution. They got clean bandages and pain medication instead. Why do you help us? One warrior asked. We came to conquer you. We killed your people. Because the fighting is over, Amelia said. Because you're wounded and we're doctors. Because showing mercy is what separates us from those who think might makes right. The warrior didn't understand, but he accepted the treatment. Vesk did understand. He had been watching the humans for days now. He had seen their tactics, their determination, their willingness to fight to the death to defend their home. But he had also seen their mercy, their medical care, their refusal to torture prisoners. They are not prey, he said to the warriors around him. The Dominion lied to us. Humans are not weak. They are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. They are small, another warrior protested. We are stronger. Strength doesn't matter if you're dead, Vesk said. They killed 3,000 of us. They destroyed 4 of our ships. They did it with traps and tactics and weapons we didn't know existed. They fought smarter than us. And now, even after everything we did, they're keeping us alive and treating our wounds. That's not weakness. That's confidence. They know they won. The other warriors fell silent. They couldn't argue with the evidence around them. 3 days after the surrender, Elena stood on a hill overlooking the valley. Below, Kresh prisoners worked under guard, digging graves. Not just for their own dead, but for the colonists who had fallen defending their homes. It was Elena's idea. She wanted one cemetery for everyone human and Kresh together. Some colonists protested. Some Kresh refused. But Elena insisted. They came here as enemies, she said. They died here together. They'll rest here together. Maybe in death, they can find the peace that eluded them in life. The cemetery took shape over several days. Human and Kresh dead, buried side by side. Simple markers with names and dates. No elaborate monuments, no grand speeches. Just quiet acknowledgement of lives lost. Shurkith came down from his command carrier for the dedication ceremony. He looked older, defeated. The confidence and pride were gone, replaced by bitter understanding. You could have killed us all, he said to Elena. You had the power. Why didn't you? Because we're not monsters, Elena said. We fought to defend our homes, not to commit genocide. You surrendered. We accepted. That's how civilized species behave. The Dominion will not see it that way. They will see surrender as weakness. Then they're as foolish as you were when you came here, Elena said bluntly. You attacked us thinking we were weak prey. You learned otherwise. Maybe your Dominion can learn from your mistake without repeating it. Shurkith looked at the cemetery, at the rows of graves, human and Kresh mixed together. We were wrong about humans, he said quietly. I will make sure the Dominion knows this. I will tell them that humans are not prey. That you are the most dangerous species in the galaxy when cornered. That you fight with tactics and cunning we cannot match. Good, Elena said. And tell them one more thing. Tell them we came to this world for peace. We didn't want war. We still don't want war. But if they bring war to us again, we will finish it. Every time. Without mercy. Shurkith nodded. He understood. The humans had given him a message to deliver, and he would deliver it. His people needed to understand what they had encountered here. The final ceremony was simple. Colonists and Kresh prisoners gathered around the cemetery. Dr. Okonkwo spoke for the humans. An old Kresh warrior named Dravuk spoke for his people. They talked about loss, about the cost of war, about the waste of young lives. Then Alea unveiled the memorial stone. It was made from local granite, polished smooth. Carved into it were the names of every colonist who had died defending New Sarajevo. Below that, a simple inscription. They came for our colony. We gave them a mass grave. May this be a lesson that lasts. Some colonists thought it was too harsh. Others thought it was perfect. Elena didn't care about opinions. She cared about the message. Future enemies needed to understand what waited for them if they attacked human colonies. But below that inscription, in smaller letters, was a second message. In death, enemies become equals. May those who rest here find peace together. That was important too. The universe needed to know humans could be ruthless, but also merciful. That they fought hard, but knew when to stop. That they could be both warriors and humanitarians. Vesk stood among the prisoners, looking at the memorial. He thought about everything he had learned. About the human capacity for violence and compassion existing side by side. About veterans who wanted peace, but never forgot how to wage war. About a species that would fight to the death to defend their own, then turn around and heal their enemies' wounds. I will remember this, he said quietly to himself. And I will make sure others remember it too. 2 weeks after the battle, the crushed fleet prepared to leave. The prisoners had been returned. The wounded had been treated. The dead had been buried. Now it was time for the survivors to go home and carry the message of what had happened here. Elena stood in the command center, watching the ships depart on the sensors. 6 ships where there had been 12. Hundreds of warriors where there had been thousands. A broken fleet limping home to explain their defeat. Think they learned their lesson? Marcus asked. Some of them did, Elena said. Vesk certainly did. Whether the Dominion as a whole learns, that remains to be seen. And if they come back, then we'll beat them again. And again. As many times as necessary until they understand that humans are not prey. Sarah looked up from her console. Commander, we're getting messages from other colonies. Word of the battle has spread. They're asking for defensive consultations. They want to know how we did it. Elena smiled slightly. Send them everything. Defensive plans, tactics, equipment specifications. Every colony should be prepared like we were. Let's make sure no one else gets caught off guard. The battle footage is spreading through the Dominion too, Sarah added. Vesk has been talking to other warriors. The story of what happened here is becoming known. Good, Elena said. Let it spread. Let every species that thinks humans are weak hear about New Sarajevo. Let them understand what happens when you mistake our love of peace for inability to wage war. She looked out the window at the colony below. The central plaza was a crater. Buildings were ruins. Fields were burned. It would take years to rebuild everything they had lost, but they had won. They had defended their home against impossible odds, and they had sent a message to the galaxy that would echo for generations. 3 months later, Elena received an unexpected transmission. It was from Earth, from the Colonial Defense Authority. They wanted to recognize New Sarajevo's defense as exemplary. They wanted to study the battle. They wanted to honor the fallen. Elena declined the honors, but agreed to share the data. Other colonies needed to learn from their experience. Other veterans needed to know that their skills could protect their new homes. She also received a personal message from Vesk. He had returned to the Dominion and was speaking out against the harvesting operations. He was telling his people about human capabilities, about the mistake of underestimating them. He was making enemies among the old guard, but he was finding